My 8-year-old daughter was on life support after a car accident when my mom texted, "Bring cupcakes for your niece's school party tomorrow." I replied, "I can't, I'm in the hospital with my daughter who's fighting for her life." She coldly replied, "You always ruin everything with your selfish drama." Sister added, "Stop being so dramatic, kids get hurt all the time." Dad texted, "Your niece's party is more important than your attention seeking." I froze in disbelief at their cruelty. Then the doctor came in and said, "Your mom." My name is Elena, and I'm a single mom to the most amazing 8-year-old girl you could ever meet. Kaya has been my world since her father walked out when she was 2. We've built a beautiful life together, just the two of us, in our little apartment across town from my family. I work as a nurse at a local hospital, which became incredibly important later in this story. My family has always been complicated. My mom, Monica, has this way of making everything about herself. My sister Nadine is her golden child, married to a lawyer, living in a McMansion, with 2 kids who can apparently do no wrong. She is Erica, who's 8, and her younger son, Noel, who's 5. My dad, Franklin, just goes along with whatever keeps the peace. I've always been the black sheep, the one who causes drama by having opinions or, God forbid, needs. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when my world shattered. I was at work, finishing up my shift in the pediatric ward, when my phone rang. Kaya's school. The principal's voice was shaking as she told me there had been an accident. A drunk driver had run a red light and slammed into the school bus. Several children were injured. Kaya was being airlifted to the trauma center. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. I don't remember parking or running through the emergency department doors. What I remember is Dr. Rona Ellis's face when he found me in the waiting room. Kaya had suffered severe head trauma, internal bleeding, and multiple fractures. She was in surgery, fighting for her life. The next 18 hours were a blur of waiting rooms, surgical updates, and prayers to any deity who might be listening. When they finally let me see her, my beautiful, vibrant daughter looked so small in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines keeping her alive. She was on life support, in a medically induced coma, and the doctors couldn't tell me if she'd wake up. I called my mom that first night, sobbing into the phone, begging her to come. "I can't do this alone," I whispered. "Kaya might not make it." "Oh, Lena," she sighed, and I could practically hear her eye roll. "You're always so dramatic. Kids are resilient. She'll be fine. I can't just drop everything and drive 3 hours because you're panicking." That should have been my first warning. I spent the next 3 days living in that hospital room. The nurses, my colleagues, brought me coffee and sandwiches. They set up a cot so I could sleep next to Kaya's bed. I held her hand and read her favorite books aloud, hoping she could hear me. The doctors were cautiously optimistic but honest about the long road ahead. It was Friday afternoon when the text started. "Mom, Elena, don't forget to bring cupcakes for Erica's school party tomorrow. The ones with the pink frosting she likes." I stared at my phone in disbelief. Erica is Nadine's daughter, my 8-year-old niece. I couldn't believe my mom was texting me about cupcakes while Kaya was fighting for her life. Me, I can't. I'm in the hospital with my daughter who's fighting for her life. The response came back faster than I expected. "Mom, you always ruin everything with your selfish drama." I actually gasped out loud. The nurse checking Kaya's vitals asked if I was okay. I wasn't. I was the furthest thing from okay a person could be. Then Nadine chimed in. "Nadine, stop being so dramatic, kids get hurt all the time. Erica's been looking forward to this party for weeks. Don't disappoint her because you want attention." I felt physically sick. These were the people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally. My hands were shaking as I typed back. "Me, Kaya is on life support. She might die. How can you call this drama? Dad, your niece's party is more important than your attention seeking. You've always been jealous of Nadine's family. Stop using your daughter to get sympathy." I froze in disbelief at their cruelty. My own father had just accused me of using my dying daughter for attention. I was staring at my phone, tears streaming down my face, when Dr. Rowan Ellis walked into the room. "Elena," he said gently, "I have some news about your mom." My heart stopped. Had something happened to Monica? Despite everything, she was still my mother. "We ran Kaya's blood work again, and there's something you need to know. Your mother called the hospital this morning, claiming to be Kaya's grandmother. She tried to get information about Kaya's condition and..." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "She also asked about Kaya's inheritance situation. Specifically, if there was a life insurance policy and who would be the beneficiary if Kaya didn't survive." The blood drained from my face. "What?" "She told our social worker that she was concerned about the financial burden Kaya's care might place on you and wanted to know about end-of-life options." "Elena, I have to ask, did you discuss discontinuing Kaya's care with your mother?" "No." I nearly shouted. "Never. I would never, she's my baby." Dr. Rowan Ellis nodded quickly. "I didn't think so. Your dedication to Kaya has been redeniable. But I needed to ask because your mother was quite insistent. She seemed to know a lot about your financial situation and kept mentioning how expensive Kaya's care would be." The pieces started falling into place. My mom had always been obsessed with money. She knew I had a small life insurance policy for Kaya. I'd mentioned it years ago when I first got the job at the hospital. She also knew I'd been struggling since Kaya's father stopped paying child support. "Doctor," I said slowly, "what exactly did my mother say?" He looked uncomfortable. She asked multiple questions about brain death protocols, how long we typically keep patients on life support, and what the process was for. Making difficult decisions. She also asked about organ donation and if there were any financial benefits. I felt like I was going to vomit. My mother had called the hospital where I worked, where my colleagues knew me, and essentially asked about killing my daughter for money. That's when I decided to get revenge. I screenshot every single cruel text message. Then I did something that would have been unthinkable a week earlier. I started documenting everything. Every conversation, every phone call, every interaction with my family. The next morning, Nadine called. Elena, about those cupcakes. Nadine, I interrupted, I need to tell you something. Mom called the hospital yesterday. Oh good, finally showing some support? She asked about ending Kaya's life support and if there was life insurance money involved. The silence stretched for so long I thought she'd hung up. That's ridiculous, Nadine finally stammered. Mom wouldn't. I can have Dr. Rowan Ellis call you if you'd like to verify. Another long pause. Well, Kaya's care is expensive. Mom's just being practical. Practical? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She's talking about my daughter dying? Elena, you're being dramatic again. Mom's just thinking about the family's financial situation. You know she's always been the responsible one. I hung up. Over the next week, as Kaya slowly began to improve, I received a steady stream of messages from my family. Not asking about Kaya's condition, but about when I'd be back to normal and able to help with family obligations. Nadine sent me a bill for the cupcakes she'd had to buy for Erica's party. Mom texted asking if I could babysit my nephew Noel the following weekend because she had plans. Not once did any of them ask how Kaya was doing. But the messages kept coming, each one more infuriating than the last. Tuesday morning, while I was helping Kaya with her breathing exercises, my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Elena, your mom's birthday is next month. She wants you to organize the party like you always do. The country club is booked, so you'll need to find somewhere else. I stared at the message in disbelief. My mother's birthday was still 3 weeks away, and here I was, barely sleeping, living on hospital cafeteria food and vending machine coffee, watching my daughter relearn how to speak properly after her brain injury, and they wanted me to plan a party. Wednesday brought a call from Nadine. Elena, I know you're dealing with Kaya's little accident, but Erica's dance recital is this weekend. She specifically requested that you be there because you always bring her those chocolate flowers she likes. You can't disappoint her. Little accident? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. Nadine, Kaya was in a coma for 3 weeks. Well, she's awake now, isn't she? Kids bounce back. You're making this into such a big deal. Erica's recital is important too. I hung up again, but this time I was shaking with rage. My own sister had just called my daughter's near-death experience a little accident and suggested that a dance recital was equally important. That afternoon, Dr. Rowan Ellis found me crying in the family lounge. Elena, what's wrong? Is Kaya okay? She's fine, I said, wiping my eyes. It's my family. They're acting like nothing happened. Like Kaya's recovery is an inconvenience to their social calendar. Dr. Rowan Ellis sat down beside me. Elena, in my 20 years of practice, I've seen families handle trauma in many different ways. Some pull together, some fall apart. But what your family is doing, this level of callousness is unusual. They sent me a bill, I said, laughing bitterly. For cupcakes. For a party I couldn't attend because I was here, watching machines keep my daughter alive. Have you considered that maybe you need to protect yourself and Kaya from this kind of toxicity? His words hit me like a lightning bolt. Protect ourselves. Yes, that's exactly what I needed to do. That evening, I started keeping detailed records of every interaction with my family. I wrote down dates, times, exact quotes. I screenshot every cruel text message. I even started recording phone calls, which is legal in our state as long as one party consents. Thursday brought the most shocking revelation yet. Kaya's physical therapist, Angela, pulled me aside after Kaya's session. Elena, I need to ask you something, and please don't be offended. Did you give anyone permission to call about Kaya's treatment plan? My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She asked about Kaya's recovery timeline, what the costs would be for ongoing care, and whether there might be long-term disabilities that would require expensive treatment, Angela explained carefully. She'd also asked about home care options and programs for families dealing with permanent disabilities. It seemed like she was more focused on worst-case scenarios than hoping for recovery. I felt sick. What did you tell her? Nothing. We can't give out patient information without written consent. But Elena, the questions she was asking, they weren't the questions of someone hoping for recovery. They were the questions of someone planning for failure. That night, I called the hospital's patient advocate and reported the incident. They assured me that no information had been given out, but they also suggested I might want to add a password to Kaya's file to prevent any future unauthorized inquiries. Friday morning, I was helping Kaya with her breakfast when my phone rang. It was my Aunt Daphne, my mother's sister, calling from 2 states away. Elena, honey, I just heard about Kaya's accident. I'm so sorry. How is she doing? For the first time in weeks, I heard genuine concern in a family member's voice. I started crying as I told her about Kaya's progress. That's wonderful news, Daphne said. I wanted to call sooner, but Monica told me you didn't want to be bothered with family calls. She said you were handling everything and didn't need help. My blood ran cold. Aunt Daphne, I never said that. I've been begging for support. There was a long pause. Elena, what exactly has Monica been telling people? It turned out my mother had been calling extended family members, church friends, and family acquaintances, telling them that I was handling Kaya's situation and didn't want visitors or calls because I was very private about family matters. She'd been actively preventing people from reaching out to support us. She told me you were being dramatic about the whole thing, Daphne continued. She said Kaya had a minor concussion and you were milking it for attention. Elena, I'm so sorry. If I'd known how serious this was. She's been lying to everyone, I whispered. What can I do to help? I can drive down this weekend. I can bring food, help with anything you need. I started crying again, but this time it was relief. Finally, someone who cared. Daphne arrived Saturday morning with a car full of homemade meals, fresh clothes for me, and a giant teddy bear for Kaya. She took one look at Kaya's condition and started crying. Oh, sweetheart, she said, gently stroking Kaya's hair. You've been so brave. Aunt Daphne is here now. Having Daphne there was like having a protective shield. She fielded phone calls, dealt with insurance paperwork, and most importantly, she witnessed firsthand how my immediate family was treating us. Sunday afternoon, while Kaya was napping, my phone rang. It was Mom. Elena, Daphne called me. She's very upset about something. What lies have you been telling her? I put the phone on speaker so Daphne could hear. I didn't tell her any lies, Mom. I told her the truth about Kaya's condition and about how you've been acting, how I've been acting. Elena, I've been nothing but supportive. I even called the hospital to check on Kaya. You called to ask about ending her life support. That's not what I did. I was asking about all the options because I was worried about the financial burden on you. I was trying to be helpful. Daphne's eyes widened as she listened. Mom, you asked about organ donation benefits. You asked about brain death protocols. You tried to find out about my insurance policies. Well, someone needs to think practically about these things. You're too emotional to make rational decisions. Daphne grabbed the phone from me. Monica, this is Daphne. I'm sitting here looking at my great niece, who is very much alive and recovering beautifully. What you're describing isn't practical thinking, it's unconscionable. Daphne, you don't understand the full situation. I understand that you called the hospital and asked about killing your granddaughter for money. I understand that you've been lying to family members to prevent them from supporting Elena. I understand that you sent Elena a bill for cupcakes while Kaya was in a coma. The line went quiet. Monica, I've known you for 43 years, and I have never been more ashamed to call you my sister. Mom hung up. That evening, Daphne sat me down for a serious conversation. Elena, I need to tell you something. This isn't the first time Monica has shown this side of herself. When your grandmother was dying, Monica was very focused on the inheritance. She actually asked the doctors about speeding up the process because the nursing home was expensive. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? Your father and I never told you because we thought it was grief making her act irrationally. But now, seeing how she's treating Kaya, I think this is who she really is. Daphne stayed for a week, and during that time, I learned more about my family's true nature than I had in 32 years of life. She told me about the times Mom had manipulated situations for financial gain, about how she'd always been jealous of my independence, about how she'd been spreading rumors about my parenting for years. She's always resented that you left town and built a life for yourself, Daphne explained. She wanted you to stay home and be available to help with Nadine's kids and take care of your parents as they age. Kaya's accident wasn't a tragedy to her, it was an opportunity to either get rid of what she saw as your burden or to force you to come home dependent on family help. The pieces were finally falling into place. My mother hadn't just been cruel in a moment of stress, she'd been systematically trying to isolate me and control my choices for years. On Daphne's last day, she hugged me tightly. Elena, you and Kaya are going to be fine. You're stronger than you know, and you're a wonderful mother. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. After Daphne left, I felt more determined than ever to protect Kaya and myself from my toxic family. But I also felt something else, a burning desire to make sure they faced consequences for their cruelty. That's when I implemented my plan. First, I called my family's lawyer. Yes, they have a family lawyer because Mom's always been worried about protecting assets. I recorded the conversation where I told him about Mom's call to the hospital. I could hear the sharp intake of breath when I explained what she'd asked about. Elena, he said carefully, what your mother did could be considered a form of elder abuse if she were trying to influence medical decisions for financial gain. But since it's about a child, this is actually potentially criminal. I asked him to document everything and keep records. Next, I reached out to Nadine's mother-in-law, Sylvia, whom I'd always gotten along with. Sylvia had never liked how my family treated me, and she was horrified when I told her what had happened. Elena, honey, I had no idea they were this cruel. What can I do to help? Sylvia, it turned out, was well connected in our small town. She sat on the hospital board, was friends with the school superintendent, and knew everyone who mattered. More importantly, she had always suspected that Nadine's perfect life wasn't so perfect. Within days, Sylvia had quietly spread the word about what my family had done. In a small town, news travels fast, especially when it involves someone calling a hospital to ask about ending a child's life support for money. The response was swift and brutal. Nadine's husband, David, was up for partner at his law firm. The senior partners, who were friends with Sylvia, suddenly seemed less enthusiastic about his promotion. Questions were raised about his judgment and character. After all, what kind of man stays married to someone who supports ending a child's life support for financial gain? Mom's position as treasurer of the church was quietly terminated. The pastor, who had heard about the situation from his wife, who worked at the hospital, suggested she take some time to reflect on Christian values of compassion and family support. Dad's construction business began losing clients. Word had spread that he called his own granddaughter's fight for life attention-seeking. In a community where family values mattered, that was business suicide. But I was just getting started. Kaya woke up on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after the accident. She couldn't remember much, but she was alive, and the doctors were optimistic about her recovery. The first thing she asked for was her favorite stuffed animal, and the second thing was whether Grandma Monica had come to visit. "No, sweetheart," I said, smoothing her hair. "Grandma's been busy." "With what?" Kaya asked innocently. That's when I realized my 8-year-old daughter had more emotional intelligence than my entire family combined. I documented Kaya's recovery meticulously. Every milestone, every improvement, every moment of joy. And I shared none of it with my family. They only learned about Kaya's progress through other people. Sylvia made sure to mention at the grocery store how well Kaya was doing. The church prayer circle celebrated her recovery. The local newspaper even did a small story about her resilience after the school bus accident. My family was completely shut out. A month after Kaya woke up, Nadine showed up at the hospital unannounced. "Elena, we need to talk." "About what?" I asked coldly. "About this ridiculous feud you're having with the family. Mom's really hurt that you won't talk to her." "Nadine, your mother called this hospital and asked about ending my daughter's life support so she could collect insurance money." "That's not what happened," Nadine snapped. "She was just asking questions because she was worried about you financially." "She asked about organ donation benefits, Nadine. She asked about brain death protocols. She wanted to know how to kill my daughter." Nadine's face went pale. "You're exaggerating. I have the hospital's documentation. Would you like to see it?" That's when Nadine's mask finally slipped. "Look, Elena, we all know you've been struggling since Mike left. Kaya's accident is tragic, but you can't let it ruin your life. Sometimes these things happen for a reason." I stared at my sister, wondering how we could possibly share DNA. "Get out," I said quietly. "Elena, get out of my daughter's room, out of this hospital, and out of our lives. Don't ever contact us again." Nadine left, but not before muttering something about how I'd regret this when I needed family support. 2 months later, Kaya was home and doing well in physical therapy. Her recovery was nothing short of miraculous, and she was back to her happy, energetic self. We were planning a small celebration when I got a call from Sylvia. "Elena, honey, you need to know something. Nadine and David are getting divorced." Apparently, the stress of David's career troubles, combined with the community's judgment about their heartless behavior, had destroyed their marriage. Nadine had been having an affair with her personal trainer, and David had filed for divorce citing irreconcilable differences. The custody battle was getting ugly, and Nadine's own texts about Kaya's accident were being used as evidence of her character. "But that's not the best part," Sylvia continued. "Your mother tried to take a loan against her house to pay for a lawyer for Nadine. The bank denied it because of her reputation in the community. Apparently, trying to convince doctors to end your granddaughter's life support doesn't make you a good credit risk." I felt a moment of satisfaction, followed immediately by sadness. These people had been my family, and now they were strangers who had shown me exactly who they really were when I needed them most. 3 months after the accident, I got one final text from my mother. "Elena, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I never meant to hurt anyone. Kaya is my granddaughter, and I love her. Can we please talk?" I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to pretend none of this had happened, to have my family back. But then I looked at Kaya, who was coloring at our kitchen table, alive and happy and completely unaware that her own grandmother had once asked doctors about ending her life. I deleted the message without responding. 6 months later, our new life was better than I could have imagined. Kaya had made a full recovery and was back in school. The other families from the bus accident had become like a second family to us. We understood each other in ways my biological family never could. Sylvia had introduced me to her son, a pediatric nurse who worked at the children's hospital downtown. Dean was kind, patient, and absolutely wonderful with Kaya. We'd been dating for 8 months, and Kaya adored him. But I also received an unexpected inheritance from my great-aunt Margaret on my father's side, a woman I'd only met a few times who had apparently left me her small house and savings because she remembered how devoted I was to my daughter when we met at family gatherings. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. But the final piece of revenge came from an unexpected source. Kaya's teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, called me one afternoon. "Elena, I wanted to let you know that Erica's been asking a lot of questions about Kaya's accident. She's been telling the other children that her grandmother said Kaya was faking it for attention. I thought you should know." My heart broke for my niece. She was just repeating what she'd heard at home, but the other children were starting to avoid her. In trying to poison people against me and Kaya, my family had accidentally isolated their own child. Meanwhile, the fallout from my family's behavior continued to spread through our small town like wildfire. Sylvia had been strategically sharing information with key people in the community, and the response was more severe than I had anticipated. The first major consequence hit Nadine's husband, David. His law firm specialized in family law, and several high-profile clients had quietly requested different attorneys after hearing about the family's treatment of Kaya. The senior partner, Mr. Blackwood, called David into his office for what David later described to Nadine as the most humiliating conversation of my career. David, Mr. Blackwood had said, our firm's reputation is built on trust and family values. When clients hear that your wife and mother-in-law were discussing ending a child's life support for financial reasons, it raises serious questions about judgment and character. David tried to explain that he hadn't been involved in those conversations, but Mr. Blackwood cut him off. The fact that you remained silent while your wife called your niece's life-threatening injuries traumatic tells us everything we need to know about your values. We'll be restructuring your role in the firm. David was demoted from the partnership track to associate status, effectively killing his career advancement for the foreseeable future. At the same time, my mother was facing her own consequences. The church board called an emergency meeting about her position as treasurer. Pastor Williams, a kind man who had always supported struggling families, was reportedly furious when he learned about Mom's hospital call. Monica, he had said during the meeting, our church is built on the foundation of caring for the vulnerable, especially children. What you did goes against everything we stand for. But Mom wasn't going down without a fight. She showed up at the hospital 5 weeks after my confrontation with Nadine, demanding to see Kaya. I'm her grandmother, she told the security guard. I have rights. The security guard called up to the pediatric ward, where my friend and colleague, Nurse Janet, was working. Elena put a no-contact order on file, Janet told security. Monica Thompson is not allowed to see Kaya under any circumstances. Mom caused such a scene in the lobby that hospital security had to escort her out. The incident was witnessed by dozens of people, including several nurses who knew me personally. Word spread quickly through our interconnected community. The next day, I received a call from Mrs. Peterson, Kaya's former teacher. Elena, I wanted you to know that your mother came to the school yesterday. She was asking questions about Kaya's behavior before the accident, trying to suggest that Kaya had behavioral problems that might have contributed to the accident somehow. I was speechless. What? She was fishing for information she could use too. I don't know, blame Kaya for what happened? The principal asked her to leave. Elena, what is going on with your family? That's when I realized Mom wasn't just being callous, she was actively trying to build a narrative that would justify her previous behavior. If she could convince people that Kaya was somehow problematic or that I was an unfit mother, then her suggestions about ending life support would seem reasonable rather than monstrous. I called my lawyer friend from the hospital board, Maria Santos, and filled her in on the latest developments. Elena, what your mother is doing could be considered harassment and defamation. She's trying to damage your reputation and create a false narrative about Kaya's accident. We need to document everything. Maria helped me get a formal restraining order against my mother. The paperwork detailed every inappropriate contact, every cruel message, and every attempt to interfere with Kaya's care. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. When the judge reviewed the evidence, including the hospital's documentation of Mom's inappropriate inquiries and the pattern of harassment, his face grew stern. Mrs. Thompson, he said to my mother at the hearing, your pattern of behavior toward your daughter and granddaughter during this medical crisis shows a concerning lack of empathy and judgment. This restraining order is granted, and I'm extending it to include Mr. Thompson based on his documented harassment at the hospital. The local newspaper, which typically only covered high school sports and town council meetings, ran a small item about the restraining order. They didn't name names, but in a town of 15,000 people, everyone knew who it was about. The social consequences were swift and merciless. Mom's weekly bridge club suddenly found they didn't have room for her at the table. The book club she'd been part of for 8 years stopped returning her calls. Even the grocery store clerks, who had always been friendly, began treating her coldly. Nadine, meanwhile, was dealing with her own cascade of problems. Her affair with her personal trainer had become public knowledge, and David had filed for divorce. But the custody battle was where the real drama unfolded. David's lawyer had obtained copies of all of Nadine's text messages about Kaya's accident. During the custody hearing, he read them aloud in open court. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence of Mrs. Richardson's character and judgment. While her 8-year-old niece was fighting for her life in the hospital, Mrs. Richardson sent the following text message to her sister: "Stop being so dramatic, kids get hurt all the time." The judge's expression grew more severe as David's lawyer continued reading the messages. When he got to the part about the cupcakes being more important than Kaya's life, several people in the courtroom gasped audibly. Furthermore, Your Honor, Mrs. Richardson supported her mother's inquiries about ending the child's life support for financial reasons. This demonstrates a pattern of placing material concerns above the welfare of children. Nadine's lawyer tried to argue that the messages were taken out of context, but the damage was done. The judge awarded David primary custody of both children, with Nadine getting only supervised visitation until she completed parenting classes and counseling. The court case was public record, and the details quickly became the talk of the town. Sylvia, who had been strategically orchestrating much of the social consequences, made sure the right people knew about Nadine's courtroom humiliation. Meanwhile, my father's construction business was suffering the most dramatic consequences of all. Word had spread that he'd called his own granddaughter's fight for life attention-seeking, and in a community where family values were paramount, that was business suicide. His biggest client, the Riverside Development Company, canceled a major contract worth $200,000. The project manager, whose own daughter had been injured in a school accident the previous year, was reportedly disgusted by Dad's behavior. "I can't in good conscience work with someone who would abandon their family during a medical crisis," he told my father during a tense phone call that several people overheard. Other clients followed suit over the following months. The Methodist Church canceled their renovation project. The county school board removed Dad's company from their approved contractor list. Within 6 months, his business had lost over 60% of its revenue. Dad tried to salvage the situation by reaching out to me directly, showing up at the hospital one afternoon while I was visiting Kaya during her physical therapy session. "Elena, we need to talk," he said, blocking my path in the hallway. "You're not supposed to be here," I replied coldly. "The restraining order covers you too. This has gone too far. Your mother made a mistake, but you're destroying the whole family over it." "I'm not destroying anything, Dad. I'm protecting my daughter from people who ask doctors about killing her for money." "It wasn't like that, and you know it." "Then what was it like? Please, explain to me how asking about organ donation benefits and brain death protocols was anything other than trying to find a way to profit from my daughter's death." Dad's face turned red. "You're being dramatic, just like always. Kaya's fine now, isn't she? Your mother was just trying to be practical about a difficult situation." "Get out," I said quietly. "Get out before I call security. You can't keep us away from Kaya forever. She's our granddaughter. Watch me." That encounter was witnessed by several hospital staff members, including Dr. Rowan Ellis, who later told me he'd never seen such a clear example of emotional abuse in action. "Elena, the way your father minimized Kaya's trauma and tried to gaslight you about your mother's behavior. That's textbook emotional manipulation. You're absolutely right to protect yourself and Kaya from that toxicity. But the consequences for my family weren't finished yet. The most dramatic fallout was still to come. 3 months after the accident, I received a call from my cousin Reed, Daphne's son, who lived in the same town as my parents. "Elena, I wanted to give you a heads up. Your parents are in some serious financial trouble. Your dad's business is basically bankrupt, and they're behind on their mortgage. Your mom's been calling around to extended family, asking for money." "What's she been telling people?" "That you've turned the whole family against them over a misunderstanding about Kaya's accident. She's claiming you're vindictive and cruel, and that they're innocent victims of your overreaction." But Reed had talked to Daphne, so he knew the real story. "Nobody's giving them money, Elena. Daphne made sure everyone in the family knows what really happened. Your mom's pretty much burned every bridge she has." The final blow came when my parents were forced to sell their house. The financial pressure from Dad's failing business, combined with the legal fees from fighting the restraining order and Nadine's divorce, had left them in serious debt. They moved into a small apartment across town, and according to Reed, Mom spent most of her time alone. Her social circle had completely evaporated, and she was essentially ostracized from the community she'd lived in for 30 years. It was around this time that I made a decision that surprised even me. I called Nadine. "Nadine, it's Elena." "Elena. Oh my God, I'm so glad you called. We need to. I'm calling about Erica," I interrupted. "She's having problems at school because of what Mom's been saying about Kaya's accident." Silence. "I want you to know that I don't blame Erica for anything. She's 8 years old, and she's innocent in all this. If she ever needs anything, if she needs someone to talk to, if she needs help with school, if she just needs a safe place, she can always come to me." Nadine started crying. "Elena, I'm so sorry. I know we handled everything wrong. I know Mom went too far. David left me, and I'm losing everything, and I was scared and stupid, and I took it out on you when you were already suffering. Nadine, I can't forgive what you did. What any of you did. But Erica is my niece, and I love her. She doesn't deserve to pay for your choices." It wasn't the reunion Nadine wanted, but it was the boundary I needed to set. A year and a half later, Kaya and I attended Erica's 9th birthday party. Not because Nadine and I had reconciled, but because Sylvia had organized it and Kaya wanted to see her cousin. My mom and dad weren't there, they hadn't been invited. Nadine looked tired and older, but she was making an effort to rebuild her relationship with her daughter. She thanked me quietly for being there for Erica during her parents' divorce. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," she said. "But thank you for being the bigger person." I nodded but didn't respond. Some things can't be forgiven, even when you understand why they haven't. As we were leaving, Erica ran up to Kaya and me. "Aunt Elena, I'm sorry about what Grandma Monica said about Kaya. I know she wasn't faking being hurt. I'm glad she's okay." I knelt down and hugged my niece. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot." Looking back now, 18 months later, I realized that the accident and my family's response changed everything. It showed me who I could really count on, and it wasn't the people who shared my blood. It was the nurses who brought me coffee at 3 a.m., the doctors who fought to save my daughter, the the community that rallied around us, and the new family we built from the ashes of the old one. Kaya is thriving. She's 9 now, plays soccer, and wants to be a doctor when she grows up so I can help kids like Dr. Ronellis helped me. She's had to work hard in physical therapy and speech therapy to recover fully, but her determination has been incredible. She has some memory gaps from around the time of the accident, which the doctors say is normal and probably protective. Dean and I got married last spring, about 15 months after we first met, in a small ceremony. Kaya was our flower girl, and Sylvia walked me down the aisle. My biological family wasn't invited, but our chosen family filled every seat. Sometimes people ask me if I regret cutting ties with my parents and sister. The answer is no. They showed me exactly who they were when I needed them most. They prioritized a school party over my dying daughter. They asked doctors about ending her life for money. They called her fight for life attention-seeking drama. The revenge I got wasn't elaborate or dramatic. I simply let them face the natural consequences of their choices. When you show people who you really are, they tend to respond accordingly. My family's reputation in our small town was destroyed not by anything I did, but by their own actions and words. I learned that sometimes the best revenge is just living well and protecting the people who matter most. Kaya and I have built a beautiful life surrounded by people who love us unconditionally. We're happy, healthy, and whole. And we've never needed those cupcakes. The final irony? 6 months ago, my mom was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. She's fine and the prognosis is excellent, but she reached out asking if I could help with her care since families should stick together during health crises. I sent her a text back, I can't, I'm busy with my own family. Besides, I'm sure your church friends can help. After all, family that prioritizes school parties over dying children probably has different ideas about what constitutes an emergency. I never heard back. Kaya asked me recently if she'll ever meet her other grandparents. I told her the truth, that sometimes people make choices that hurt the people they're supposed to love, and when that happens, it's okay to love them from a distance to keep yourself safe. But we have Grandma Sylvia, Kaya said, referring to Dean's mother who had embraced us both completely after Dean and I got serious. And Uncle Tony and Aunt Marie. Dean's siblings had become the aunt and uncle Kaya had always deserved. We do, I agreed. We have a wonderful family. Just not the one we started with, Kaya said with the wisdom of a child who had learned early that families come in all shapes and sizes. Just not the one we started with, I confirmed. That night, as I tucked Kaya into bed, she asked, Mommy, are you happy? I looked at my daughter, alive, healthy, safe, and surrounded by love, and I realized I'd never been happier in my life. Yes, baby. I'm very happy. And I meant it. Sometimes the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. Sometimes cutting out toxic people, even when they're blood relatives, is the healthiest thing you can do. And sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let cruel people steal your joy. Kaya and I learned that we didn't need people who would abandon us in our darkest hour. We needed people who would show up with coffee and sandwiches and tell us we were going to be okay. We found those people. We built a life with those people. And we're living happily ever after, one day at a time. The cupcakes, as it turned out, were never important at all.